Thank you, Audrey. I'm going to be, hopefully this works, because my title is the Reporting Demands of Multiple Funders and a Juggling Act. So as we can see, it's the five, I'm going to go back, because I have 5 slides which will cover the following topics: the Juggling Act related to immigrant services and programs that we are experienced at Success in our programming, which is, Success is actually one of the largest social service agencies in British Columbia, and one of the areas is immigrant services, but we've, as our CEO Queenie Chu says, we have 3 buckets: immigrant services, seniors care, and housing. Enough of that. Enough of our marketing PR. So the second one is, the second slide will actually try and identify the types of immigrant services that we currently have from a federal, provincial, and corporate perspective. And then the third one, the third slide, will identify, in my opinion, this is only my opinion, based on my experiences with the federal, provincial, and also the corporate sector, is the commonalities that we may have together, all of these funding requirements. And then the last question, which is the question that, is there any consistency and on these funders, and how can we get them all on the same page, singing from the same song sheet? That would probably be very challenging. I'm going to say to Jamie that he may have an answer on that one. So this one is that when we can see, we have United Way and other foundations. We have Service Canada, and then in BC, we have the BC Ministry of Children and Family Development, and then we also have IRCC, formerly CIC. And then we also, for our settlement program, have BC Ministry of Jobs, Tourism, and Skills Training, a mouthful. And then from the federal level, we have Employment and Social Development Canada. I think the name still stands right now. And then the City of Vancouver. And then on the corporate level, we have, we've been supported by HSBC, Vancity, TD Financial, and Accenture. So this is a juggling thing that we find ourselves in our programs. Okay, the next slide will identify all the things in white are, will actually be a federal, as well IRCC, as well as funding, and as you can see, and then the blue slide, the blue boxes are all different levels of like provincial or federal funding or corporate. Like we have a mix in those slides. By the way, I think the slide deck will be given to everybody, so you don't have to scribble. Now, let's look at what are the commonalities in reporting and evaluation. The first one out, every funder, in my experience, wants to know impact of funding. This means how specifically did our financial support make a difference, qualitatively and quantitatively, to address the challenges or the needs or service gaps. So, for example, one federal funder asks us to describe in every quarter a report of the needs and services that we provide or gaps. So the return on investment, what I call the ROI, of the project's impacts of the lives of Canadians, whether it's be corporations, especially corporations are particularly focused on this ROI issue, the question of ROI. And people like, when we, I sit on the TELUS community board, which I'm thankful. I do the opposite. We give out money as opposed to requesting money. So that, I bring both sides of the equation on the table there. So the fund, particularly corporate funders, and I know as you know, like whoever gets corporate sponsorship, like TD Financial, they all interested in the bottom line is what are the impacts that they are doing for their community, like that is also related to the outcomes that achieved. Every funder, in my opinion, has this question about what are the needs and service gaps that we are meeting qualitatively and quantitatively. Now, for example, in BC, the BC government requires very specific outcomes tied to the original specific proposal, and the focus tends to be on outputs, the quantitative. For example, one provincial funder only requires that we submit every quarter the statistical client caseload information and no specific outcomes. That is, whether there was any changes in a behavior or life situation. And usually these measurements, as defined, are tied to the original proposal. For example, in our applications at TELUS Community Board Fund, they must address this. The outcome has to be also identified, as well as a specific measurement has to be described and how they're going to achieve that particular outcome. So that, and then the next element of commonality is best practices. Now, this is not a common requirement. I think it more focuses from the government perspective, whether it's provincial or federal, and maybe that should be considered. However, some governments of some funders ask for lessons learned or areas of improvement. Maybe that should be an item or question of lessons learned and areas of improvement. So this is maybe a consideration. I'm not going to add to the workload of the IRCC. I mean, we are all burdened with these 60-page reports, narrative reports on the APPRC, whatever. And then the other area that we all have to answer is the client needs. And usually this is part of the outcomes and impact question. Every funder that I know of, whether it's corporate, foundations, government, and United Way, they all seek client success stories. And that is where they want to know how their, I think in this terms, how the money has actually impacted directly at the grassroots level, right? So, and that also depends on the objectives of the clients. For example, though there are some programs that where the success story of a client requires a sort of a time lag. We have a program of a foreign credentials loan project that if we give a client a loan in sort of one time period, it might take after they get credentialed, and then they get a job in their profession, whatever it is, like a doctor, dentist, a pharmacist, nurses, etc. It might take them 5 years before we know the ultimate outcome, right? Because whether they are successful in achieving whatever the goal was at that time. And then the other one is program challenges. And this is more a response to the questions about impact and outcomes, in my view. Finally, reporting, financial reporting. Every funder wants to know how the revenues and expenses were tallied up. And we all know we got to do that, whether it's annually or quarterly. CIC, I'm still in the CIC. IRCC has also added to the SPOs and LIPs a cash flow requirement, right? We got to do that. And that adds to the, I won't say the administrative burden, and we hope that maybe that can be revised or readjusted. Now, finally, if we can have a greater consistency across funding agencies, in my opinion, it would be achievable with government funding, but it will be quite challenging if we involve foundations and corporations, unless we call a meeting that have a multi-party, and which is, I'm not too sure whether we will, that includes also NGOs and agencies that receive these fundings. I think, would it make life easier for an agency, especially like ours with those balls in the air? I think so, but then, as they say, the devil would be in the details. Like, how do we get there? The questions, in my view, will need to be addressed as what is the goal of the measurement? That is the purpose. What evaluation methodology or strategy will be adopted? And this one will probably get us into a heck of a lot of discussion. And the other question we have to figure out collectively, and I think it's probably better for between governments, the federal, provincial, and city governments, to figure out what is the funding model. Are we talking about grants, or we are talking about contribution agreements? And then the other question we need to also address is what are the variables and the outcomes to be measured, and and how much qualitative and quantitative data is required for the project. Finally, which is probably going to be the easiest and simplest, is what will be the financial reporting template. So these are the things that we have to consider, and I believe, in my opinion, would make the most sense in these reporting requirements. If we can get the players, and I'm not too sure whether P2P would be leading this initiative to get the players in one room, and I'm sure it's going to take more than one day to hash it out, all of these elements, right? From outcome measurement, what is the methodology, and what is the purpose, and how are we going to not only use the data, but what is the ultimate goal of the data, collection of the data. And also, I think we got to address the impact question. And I know this is terribly hard to define impact. I mean, that's the question I posed for you collectively in this room, is how do you define impact? So that's my end. Thank you.
Thank you.